You got it?
In this
Yep.
particular context of a criminal case, they say to Trump, go in front of a camera and go for it. I don't care how many times you plan things with Trump, a lot of times he does what he wants in this one.
Yeah, he definitely goes rogue. So, Carrie, just to bring context to this reporting we have from a source in the New York government, that the indictment has been unsealed and there are 34 counts and Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty to all 34. When that happens in a courtroom, do they recite each charge to the charge of X?
She's
How do you
good.
plead and he says not guilty, or how does it go?
So, different practices, but what I would expect is that they would read the charges, and you may also want to check with our New York lawyers who have been in the New York DA's office in terms of what their experience is in the court and Judge Merchan in particular. But they would read the entire indictment, or he could waive the reading of the indictment. And so one of the things that we want to listen for is how the actual proceeding for this particular judge went forward.
Let's go to Karen up in New York. Karen, how would it proceed? Would they read each one of the 34 charges and he would say not guilty to each one of them, or would it be a waiving of them all and just one plea of not guilty?
Yeah, so typically the way it's done is a defense attorney will say, the judge will ask you waive the reading of the rights, and the defense attorney will respond yes, but not the rights they're the fact that he's already, if the reporting's correct, the fact that he's already pled not guilty to all 34 charges leads me to believe that that probably did happen here, that they read the reading, they waived the reading of the 34 charges and instead just arraigned him on the indictment. This is a long proceeding, I will say, for an arraignment, because especially if he's already pled not guilty, that's the main thing that would happen here is the reading of the indictment and how do you, the entry of plea, guilty or not guilty, and he entered not guilty. So the question to me is what has been happening since he entered those pleas of not guilty here, and potentially they could be looking at future dates for scheduling, or whether or not he wants to appear, or has to appear, I should say, at future dates. But more likely is there's some legal arguments that are being sought after by either the DA or the defense attorneys who are asking the judge to rule on certain legal questions that they may or may not have, or perhaps the judge is setting the parameters of what is appropriate to be talked about or not. But this is going on a lot longer than a typical arraignment where there's no question of bail, because this is not a bail eligible offense in New York. So even if he was a flight risk or in some ways they were concerned with that, this is not a crime for which you can even ask for bail. So custody is not an issue, and if he waived the rights there, then that's also not an issue. And so I don't know what's going on there, but looking at that picture on the screen, the lead prosecutor in this case is that's Chris Conroy, who's been at the DA's office, a long-term assistant district attorney, and he's been there for a long time. The woman behind him is Susan Hoffinger. She's the attorney who successfully prosecuted the Trump Organization and got a 17-count conviction, where the opposing counsel was Susan Neckles, the woman seated to Mr. Trump's right, and then you have obviously the same Judge Merchan there.
And just to be clear, that Susan Hoffinger is the woman. The gentleman at the prosecutor's table is Chris Conroy.
Yes, the woman behind him with the black jacket and the white shirt.
That's Susan Hoffinger.
That's Susan Hoffinger sitting behind. So she's the head of the whole investigation division, which is the white collar arm of the Manhattan DA's office. So she was a defense attorney before, prosecutor before that, and Mr. Bragg, DA Bragg brought her back to lead his investigation division, which is it's an executive level position, very prestigious. And like I said, she was the trial lawyer who successfully tried the case against the Trump Organization and got the 17-count conviction on behalf of the office.
And Karen, who is the woman at the table with Chris Conroy to our left, his right, in the blue dress?
She's another ADA on the case who works in the Major Economic Crime Bureau. The team is going to have multiple
And this is
attorneys on it, and the question is, we just didn't know who was going to be the lead lawyer, who's going to be speaking on the record. It could have been Susan Hoffinger, it could have been Peter Pope, or others who are at an executive level who are working on this case. Chris Conroy is a senior investigative counsel. He's just an ADA, I should say. He's an assistant district attorney, a very senior, seasoned, excellent lawyer who
It's
they are
cracking
having
a lot.
be the ADA,
Really
who
can't
the
hear the
ADA
video.
being assistant district
Full
attorney,
vibration?
who will be arraigning Mr. Trump and speaking on the record.
So, the interesting context you also brought up is that Susan Hoffinger, the woman with the white shirt and black jacket sitting behind Chris Conroy at the prosecutor's table, just defeated in court the woman, Susan Necklace, in the green suit at the defendant's table right next to Donald Trump in the Trump Organization case, which was a big victory for District Attorney Alan Bragg, I believe, right?
Exactly right. 17 felony count conviction against the Trump Organization.
And Carrie, go
Worth
ahead.
noting though that that case ended in fine. I mean, it was convictions, and the case was successfully prosecuted from a prosecutor's perspective, but the end result was fines for the Trump Organization. I just think we have to keep that in context
Right.
in terms of this, even though this particular proceeding today has a lot of gravity to it, and the former president is sitting there at the defendant's table, there are a lot of possible outcomes, and some of them are
IT again.
other than the former president ending
IT banned.
with a felony conviction. Some of them
IT
could potentially be
banned.
something as simple as a fine.
Absolutely, and all of it in the
IT
journalism
banned.
and in the
It's the muscle you're
public.
stretching.
Being
That's the camera.
skeptical and open-minded when it comes to any accusations made by the government against any
wide,
individual, and we'll see exactly
long muscle,
what
that's like a band,
the
that's what it's
District
called.
Attorney Alan Bragg is
Hi, Lenny.
proceeding with against Donald Trump when he brings
Good morning, guys.
his
Start at the
indictment
one.
forward.
I don't think
The poll has been unsealed.
Did you go?
Others
Gotta
still,
go? Yeah.
waiting
Oh.
to see it. Adam Kaufman,
Time for lunch.
Good morning.
when we're told Trump thinks he's going to be the 36th, which is what a government official has told us that. 34 counts, what does that mean? Is that
Yeah.
34
If she wants to-
different felonies? Is it 34 misdemeanors? Is it one felony and 34
No,
counts
these are
of that
there.
one
You
felony?
want those?
Like that.
You want those?
I
Yeah.
gotta take a big box over to the accountant.
Right,
Oh, they need those. huh?
Yeah, those are for taxes.
Oh,
We
okay.
know because
Yeah.
this is a
Yep,
felony
yep, yep,
indictment being raised in the Supreme Court, that at least one count is a felony. If it's the falsifying business records, under New York State procedural law, every time there was a false business record, it would have to be
That's your stretch. Jimmy.
charged as a separate count.
That's the special
So
stretch.
It's entirely possible.
For lower
to
back.
file multiple counts,
Glutes.
every fake check or every fake entry in a.
This is why I don't have back
would
problems.
be a
Tough.
discrete count.
That's why Ginny has no back problems.
To go back
Not
to
because
the
of
way
this,
the
but
arrangement.
Because I get
was
incredible
worked,
stretch
you would expect
from you.
the
She stretches
court to simply-
every
generally, the court will
bone,
simply
every muscle.
advise
No
the
pain.
defendant that a New York County grand jury has filed an indictment charging you with,
That takes like
and then they'll
50 years of
list
stretching.
the
It's not
counts,
yesterday.
and then ask the defendant,
Yoga,
how do you plead, guilty or
practicing,
not guilty? And
consistency,
that's the point when
Effort.
Mr. Trump would have entered his
doesn't
plea
come for free,
of
doesn't
not
come easy.
guilty. But at this point, we just don't know what all of those different counts are and what the indictment contains.
Ginny,
And how long does it take for an indictment to go from being
Can you
unsealed
imagine all this
to
stretch and listen to
posted online?
history?
Especially if that's something
Watching
that
at the
is
same
of
time,
some
right?
level of interest internationally.
It's surprising to me, I mean,
Now, we're gonna
you know,
stretch your
some of
quads
the more high
and your
profile
hip
cases
flexors.
that were handled when I was there, and I know Karen can also share this experience.
muscles.
You have it sort of teed up and ready to go. You know
So
you
I
have to
would
wait
elevate.
for the unsealing of the
Go
arraignment,
deeper.
but you also have someone sort of standing by to feed that indictment out because the media is waiting for it. So I'm a little surprised that we're not seeing it yet.
Interesting. Andy McCabe, any thoughts and reactions to this? The images we're getting from the inside this courtroom are just extraordinary. With annoyed, chastened Donald Trump, the reports that he has pleaded not guilty to 34 charges. We're still waiting, of course, to hear what they are.
still waiting to hear what they are, and I would say still waiting to understand
It's taking
what
longer than
exactly
they
is still
expect.
taking place in
Was
that
the
courtroom,
judge
because
not in
as
there?
other-
I
others
don't
have
know,
mentioned,
that's
this
long,
has
right?
really gone on.
They said it's gonna be a quick thing
At
this
least
morning.
twice as long as any
They
of
better
us
change their mind.
expected.
You might be going to
My guess
jail.
is
Maybe the judge is in his chambers.
You might be going to
Issues
jail.
and, motions and scheduling has probably already
I know he's
begun.
nervous.
One of the goals that the
I'm gonna
judge
do my
would
magic.
have had in this
I'm gonna
first
go and
agreement
dig
would be to set up at least a
the tissue.
provisional schedule of when
See
those
if we have
motions would
any
be due.
scarred
So you
tissue.
can imagine, we've already heard
After all
reporting
this
from the Trump
exercise.
legal team that they intend to fight, I think they said every issue related to this case. And my guess is that those battles have probably already begun behind closed doors in 100 Center Street.
Carrie Cordero, let me ask you, the Trump defense team has already signaled that they're immediately gonna make a motion to have this case dismissed, that they think it's nonsense. that they
Dismiss.
think these charges hold water, that it's misdemeanors, et cetera. Would they make that motion at this court appearance, or would it be for a later appearance?
Normally, I think they would take more time to be able to actually write out their motions. I mean, they could have started drafting it based on what they think was coming, but they gotta really be able to look at the document. So I don't think they would make a motion to dismiss orally in front of the judge because they wanna make every single possible written argument that they can in their brief. But I would expect that they would do it relatively soon. I don't think it would be during this proceeding, but soon.
And Karen, let me ask you, because one of the speculations, and obviously we're gonna get an answer to all of this as soon as the Manhattan District Attorney posts the indictment, but one of the speculations is that the felony count will come from the idea that this business fraud was committed in the name of hiding another crime. That in New York, prosecutorial discretion is such that if you commit a misdemeanor in business fraud, to hide a different crime, then that could be upped to a felony. Is that used often, that kind of prosecution?
Yeah, so this is a common bread and butter charge for the district attorney's office. It's used in New York State, not just the Manhattan DA's office, but in multiple counties around the state. It's a very common white collar fraud charge. It's called falsifying a business record in the first degree. It's a Class E felony, which is the lowest felony
we
there
have some
is
good options
in
here.
New York State, but it's very, very common. And the question's going to be, what is the charge that brings the falsifying a business record from the misdemeanor to a felony? The misdemeanor falsifying a business record is just when you, with the intent to deceive, you enter a false or erroneous record. You make a record entry that is false or erroneous in some way with the intent to deceive someone. What makes it a felony is when you make that erroneous entry and your intent to deceive includes the commission or concealment of another crime. And there's been a lot of speculation about what's appropriate and what could that other crime be. And that's going to be the thing that I think most legal analysts are waiting to see if we get any indication of that from the unsealing of the indictment, because we might not know which crime they relied upon or crimes, because it could be multiple. They could have multiple theories of what the crimes are that they're thinking about. It also doesn't say in the statute whose crime you are intending to conceal or commit. It could be, for example, that the falsification was made in furtherance of the charges by Michael Cohen, who was already prosecuted and pled guilty in 2018 federally for this exact charge. So we just don't know what the crime will be that the district attorney used to elevate it to a felony. And again, there's been a lot of question about, is it okay to use a federal election law violation as the crime that makes this a felony? And that's going to be one of the legal arguments, I think, that the lawyers are going to make in this case, because that is something that, although it's been done many times, or several times I should say before, it's not ever been tested or litigated in court.
And also the idea, Karen, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but the idea that this alleged campaign finance falsification that the business fraud would have been covering up, the hush money payment, in 2016, that normally the statute of limitation
this is what I've been told is the theory, would have run out. But because Donald Trump was in Washington DC for 4 years and then has been in Florida since leaving the White House, it's almost as if the statute of limitations is a pause button hit because he's no longer in New York. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the statute of limitations for a felony in New York is 5 years, but there are a couple of pauses here. In addition to the one you just mentioned, that he was outside the jurisdiction continuously when he was in Washington, and don't forget he also moved his residence from New York to Florida. The governor of New York during the COVID pandemic pressed pause on the statute of limitations for a period of time for all cases, for all criminal cases in New York. And that pause was for more than a year. So that is going to be another tolling, is what they call it, of the statute of limitations that the prosecution will rely upon here.
So Governor Cuomo put pause on that for how long?
So it's unclear because there were some that it was renewed and then it was stopped a couple of times. But I assure you that the lawyers at the Manhattan DA's office have calculated exactly what that period of time is with respect to this particular case.
Okay. Amy Gangal, when you're looking at these images, one of the things, by the way, David Urban was wondering about Boris Epshteyn, who's on the far right side of your screen, who is really more of a political advisor than a lawyer, sitting at the table, although I do believe he's an attorney. Our own reporter, Sarah Murray, notes that Boris has made arguments before about not having to testify in various legal proceedings in prosecutions or investigations of Donald Trump by claiming that he has this privilege that attorneys are given.
Right, and he's not the only one we saw. I thought it was interesting, we saw Jason Miller come out through those doors. Another aide, I don't know, Andy, I can't imagine for normal people, do aides get to go back for processing?
Not typically. A lot of political advisors brought to arraignment day, and then many arraignments that I have seen. But as Carrie pointed out, as hard as they are trying to make this normal process, it just doesn't fit into that box in many ways. And the former president has obviously a larger group with him than you normally see on arraignment day, but I think we all expected that.
You know, can I just say there's a wide shot, we're not seeing it right now, but one of the things that's striking, there we go, there is no Secret Service agent anywhere near him. And they're probably in the back, standing against the wall. I spoke to some sources familiar with the Secret Service who've told me that that's exactly what would happen in this case, that they just stand back from the situation. And in some ways, I think, you know, the close-ups of Trump's face are quite striking, but seeing that wide shot where he is at the defense table and you see the court police, he's in custody, he's in their control, I think is very striking.
It's almost like any other defendant on any other day sitting in a courtroom. And I noted, you know, having covered Trump for a long time, his body language hunched over, hands clasped between his legs. JD, you were talking about anger. That is an angry Trump. That is someone whose lips are pursed, his eyes are small. He's looking right at the cameras because he knows that they are there and what they're there to do.
It must be hard for him not to say anything.
This is a frustrating moment for someone who actually has tried in so many ways to use the justice system to do things that he has wanted it to do and has been frustrated when it hasn't happened. And now he finds that he is, he calls himself a victim, but he is now the subject of the justice system itself. And it's a frustrating moment for him, I'm sure.
And he's forced today to live in reality. We're reading body language right now. Pretty soon we'll get to read an indictment. That's the most important thing that'll happen today, seeing what's actually on paper. What they lay out to Carrie's point about how do they connect the dots here. But reading his body language, this is a man, Andy mentioned CEOs in court, average Joe's in court. But this has to be a thug for him because he lives in a fantasy land. He's going to go back to Mar-a-Lago tonight where he has an office that he made deliberately to look like the Oval Office, where they have napkins with a seal that looks like the presidential seal. He calls his plane Trump Force One. He insisted everybody call him Mr. President. He says that Joe Biden lost the election and that he should have been reinstated already.
They spend time on the phone,
He's a
looking
defendant
down,
in a trial
looking
case right
forward.
now. One of the points
Or
was
computers,
looking
yeah.
at Twitter. Donald Trump Jr. just tweeted a picture of the judge's daughter saying she works.
He named his plane Trump Force One.
It's not.
He renamed his plane Trump Force One.
But this is what I was about to say. This is the game they play. It's not a game. It's
Like
not a
Air
game.
Force One?
This is how they play. Right? They try to intimidate. They attack, and they put at risk people who should not be dragged into this process. If Donald Trump is presumed innocent, if he can beat these charges, good for him. The judge's daughter has nothing to do with this, but this is what they do. This is how they have so taken this country off the rails and outside the norms.
And there's a reason why they took the prosecutor's pictures off the website for similar reasons, and it's really unfortunate that is a world in which we live, and you have people on social media doing what you just described. Another thing that I keep thinking about is
Good job, Jeannie. Good stretch. Good job, Joyce.
I've never seen my stretching before on video.
Do your sign.
you name it, for decades.
Thank you, Joyce. Do your
Thank
thing.
you, Joyce.
You're welcome,
Good job.
Joyce.
Yes, good job. She moved around. You trained her too?
Yeah.
People in
Oh, yeah, she knows how to video.